to address your question specifically, I did not know that underground sisterhood existed at that time when I lived there. So many women, most of them business women, educated women of both races, Black and white, worked together in really a hidden way because it was not accepted at that time. And these people just had expectations for a better life for their families and for themselves and for the future, really. And so I didn't know that, and it was very exciting to find that out.
Hey everyone, and welcome. I am Morgan Giss McDonald, founder, CEO of Paper Raven Books, and I have with us today a super special guest who is launching her debut novel called Beyond the Pettus Bridge. And you may recognize the name of that bridge, the Pettus Bridge. We're going to talk about it. And I have with us today Dr. Trish Dolasinski, the author of this book. She has been in education for 40 years, every level of education, all the way up to professor at Grand Canyon University. And she's a researcher, digs very deeply into the historical research. Dr. Trish, thank you for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you, Marvin, so much for having me. It's a delight to be here.
I am so excited about Beyond the Pettus Bridge because you are bringing to life history for us. And I'd love for you to kind of introduce us to like who we get to meet at the beginning of the novel and what's happening when we meet these characters.
Awesome. I'd love to share that. Well, we actually meet Claire Zaretsky, who is a young newlywed who moves from Detroit, Michigan to Selma, Alabama, and during the tumultuous times of the late 1960s. Claire attempts to fit into the Southern social scene. She is unexpectedly there because of the military situation that her husband is placed in during the Vietnam crisis. And she really wants to fit in. She's always had sorority sisters and lots of friends, and she just really wants to do what's right to be a part of the social scene. Gets a teaching job and finds that some of the cultural expectations of those times and place don't really align with her teaching values in working with children and adults. And that puts her in kind of a precarious situation until she discovers unlikely partners in an underground clandestine sisterhood. She becomes involved with like-minded women to pursue a purpose to make a difference together with these women in a collaborative fashion. She experiences all types of racism, injustice, really, social injustice, even rape, murder, and arson types of things happen throughout the novel. And amidst all of this turmoil, these like-minded women get together and make a difference for people that are living there at that time and offer hope for the future.
Wow. Okay, so we've got historical fiction. What kind of book? How would you sort of categorize this book for people who are thinking like, is this the kind of book that I would read?
I think it definitely is historical fiction. It has mystery involved. It's really women's literature. It has so much history about that time. And if people lived it, for example, beta readers who have read it and lived during that time were excited about some of the things they learned. And frankly, so was I when I went back and did history and did the research and found out about the sisterhood. So it was really enlightening for me who lived at that time and people who are in my age range to find out that this actually existed and these people were real. I think it offers a lot of historical information about a time for those people who didn't live or maybe were just born, during that time frame. So I think it offers something for a broad range of women, from their 20s all the way upward, 60s, 70s, and beyond even. So I think it really is a historical backdrop for our country and for where we're at today and where we want to continue to go.
Yes, yes. So the Pettus Bridge, can you tell us a little bit? It's in we're in Selma, Alabama, the South.
Mhm.
So we've got in the 60s, we've got some racial tension happening during that time. Can you kind of give us like what are some of the historical things that you discovered in the research process that you think would be helpful for people to kind of get to know what kinds of social issues do we get to dive into inside of this novel?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. That is really a great question. And we actually lived, my husband and I lived about a mile from the Pettus Bridge while we lived in Selma, Alabama for about 4 years. And the Pettus Bridge really is a historical location, as many people know. And we've been reminded recently of current events that we've seen in the news. Um, Edmund Winston Pettus, the person whom the bridge was named after, was actually a brigadier general in the Confederate Army. He was a senator from Alabama, and I might add, Grand Dragon of the Ku Klux Klan.
Whoa.
So that bridge has been there forever. It's a landmark in the state and in the city, and people look to it as an icon, really, in their city. However, it became particularly interesting when John Lewis, a recent senator from the state of Georgia, passed away a few years ago. Many of you may remember that. John Lewis actually walked across the Pettus Bridge from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, on March 25th in 1965. Now, that wasn't Bloody Sunday, which we all have been aware of on March 7th, and we've seen it in the news recently. But it was the final march across the bridge with Dr. Martin Luther King at that time. John Lewis marched with him. And as we speak today, right now, there are over 100,000 signatures on petitions to rename the Edmund Pettus Bridge. So we'll see where that moves. But the title, the title has evolved over the years that I've been writing the novel, and it ended up to be Beyond the Pettus Bridge as a result of recent events and the concern and discussion around that bridge. So the story is about hope, and it's moving beyond that symbol of the bridge, what it stands for in many, many ways. So we want to continue to make it better, make our country better. And it is moving beyond the bridge, the whole theme of hope in the book.
So if you're here and listening to this and you're thinking, gosh, that's the kind of novel that I want to read. I want to know about Selma, Alabama and the 1960s and the Pettus Bridge and what all was going on during that time frame in a historical novel. Good news is you can actually get a free copy today. If you go to paperravenbooks.com/beyond the Pettus Bridge. That's all one word, Beyond the Pettus, Pettus Bridge. And that will be linked up next to the video here. So paperravenbooks.com/beyond the Pettus Bridge takes you straight over to Amazon. You can grab the free ebook, download it on your Kindle for this weekend or next weekend, but go ahead and get it today while you're here and while you're thinking about it. And one of the things that I, think a lot about, Dr. Trish, when I think about your book is this sensitivity that you have to go into writing this book. And you and I have talked before. This started as a memoir. You mentioned it earlier. You lived in Selma with your husband for 4 years. Y'all moved down there. And so you were kind of, in a similar position as Claire, like kind of new into the area. And so it began as a memoir and then morphed into this novel, along with a ton of research, you mentioned beta readers. From your perspective as the author, what is your intention with writing this novel? What is your hope that you bring to the conversation with Beyond the Pettus Bridge?
Yes, the hope that I bring, and you mentioned that the beta readers. I've had several people read this book. Many of them, some of them are Afro historians who are African American authors who write about African American history. I've had two individuals so generously give up their time and energy to read my story and give me feedback on anything that they thought may not represent the times or the place or the culture. And so it's been very valuable to have a variety of individuals, people that are many years younger that did not live during that time, and those who are more who lived during that time period. And so having a variety of people read my novel and being in critique groups for several years has been so valuable to me because it's allowed me to step outside of myself. And that's another part of this, Morgan. And I think everyone would be interested to know that when you're writing a book that reflects your personal experience, it takes even a greater step to move away from what's inside of your head, because so much of who you are can go into the story, and that's good. But on the other hand, you don't want it to be that one-sided perspective. So having all these other people be a part of it has been tremendously valuable and so helpful in going through this process.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're sort of hitting right on the head of like, the struggle with writing a memoir is that you are only really representing your experience. But when you want to broaden that scope and say, I'd really like to have more of a social commentary or give people a perspective on the historical significance of these events in this time, it's like, well, then it can't really be a memoir anymore, right? It's got to change its scope, change what the book experience feels like. It's got to go into more of a novel experience for the sake of the reader. And so I think that was a really kind of courageous move on your part, Dr. Trish, because it would have been easier. Let's be honest. It would have been easier just to write the memoir. But because I think you wanted to open up this discussion around, really like culture and race and the historic times of the South, you really had to bring in more perspectives. And so we and even when we want to do that, we are still only one person. And so to reach out to folks who are younger and older, who are white and who are Black, and who might have different cultural identities that maybe are not quite so easy to say one or the other, that we're all kind of these mixed heritages and mixed experiences, to bring these multiple perspectives into the novel, I think is what makes it really special, because you're positioning it as a conversation starter, right? How can we have more, I want to say, in-depth, empathetic, knowledgeable, like we have a curiosity around what was really happening in that time period. Is there anything that you learned, like when you were researching, was there anything that you learned about Selma or that time period that surprised you?
Well, really, of course, the underground sisterhood. I mean, I did not know. I lived there. I actually taught there, and Claire is a teacher. And really, I should mention that is another underlying theme of the entire novel, is how teaching and learning, having high expectations for people who maybe have not had opportunities that many of us did have at that time or forever. So just having those high expectations and that teaching and learning component is very strong. And it does, reflect my own background and what I actually did there. But, to address your question specifically, I did not know that underground sisterhood existed at that time when I lived there. So many women, most of them business women, educated women of both races, Black and white, work together in really a hidden way, because it was not accepted at that time. And these people just had expectations for a better life for their families and for themselves and for the future, really. And so I didn't know that. And it was very exciting to find that out.
A secret sisterhood. I mean, that is pretty exciting.
Yeah, right. And the way Claire finds it is particularly interesting. So I think my readers, will really enjoy how she discovers and becomes a part of the sisterhood. It's not an easy step for Claire to take.
Oh, little mystery tease there, folks.
Oh,
So
right.
So I'm curious also, this book has been a while in the making, right? And so you've been thinking about this time of, okay, we're finally finishing the book and publishing the book and launching the book. Now, looking back, having walked through all of these phases, is there anything that you wish you had known earlier on in the process? Are there any words of encouragement that you would offer to maybe like a younger version of yourself?
Oh, I would definitely say stick to it on a daily basis. I mean, when I did write the novel, when I started it, I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I spent 1 hour every day. And I really was strict with myself to move through that process. I took a workshop through ASU and followed the steps that were given by Michael Stackpool at that time. And it worked. It really worked. So, have a structure, stick to it. And I think that's what happened. Now, why wasn't it published sooner? I'm almost thinking this fortuitous opportunity over time has been advantageous, because now is the time for Beyond the Pettus Bridge to come out. And I feel like the evolution of the process, my opportunity to delve into it more deeply, to work with critique groups and get feedback from others, has just made the story stronger and really more appropriate for the time. So my advice to all of you out there is just give yourself a structure and know that an outline is good, but your character is going to say some things and do some things that you don't expect. And that's okay too. Let your creative side kind of go with the opportunity of what comes on the page. That's what the fun part of it is, being structured and following steps. A lot of us do that all the time, but when letting yourself go a little bit and letting the character evolve is exciting. And because the person becomes very real. So just enjoy the journey. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And don't stop. Don't give up.
Yes, I totally agree with all of that. And you're right. There is this interesting balance between how much structure you have to give you the confidence to kind of, okay, it's 5 a.m. I'm sitting down. I've got something of a plan. There is some structure. There's method to this madness. And then also a little bit of freedom to say, okay, well, I didn't expect Claire to say that. What could this lead, into next?
Yeah, she does say some things like, gosh, where did that come from? But it's okay, because that's who she is, and she's become her own character, and she stepped out of my being, of my existence. So I'm glad of that, especially when you're writing in the first person. That can be, you got to be very aware of that. And so that helped.
Yeah, so good. Well, thank you, Dr. Trish. Folks, if you are still with us and you're thinking that's a book that I am curious about, grab a free copy today. So go to paperhavenbooks.com/beyond the Pettus Bridge. Pettus is Pettus, Beyond the Pettus Bridge. It'll take you straight over to Amazon. Grab a free copy of that ebook, load it onto your Kindle. Go ahead and get it now while it's available. And then you got yourself a historical novel that you can binge read, on the weekend. And we would love for you to meet Claire, to experience Selma, Alabama, and to really be a part of history in maybe a way that you haven't had an opportunity to before. Dr. Trish, any last words for our readers?
Just thank you so much for having me this afternoon. I really enjoyed the opportunity to talk about Beyond the Pettus Bridge, and I hope that everyone will pick up a copy and enjoy the journey.
Amazing. All right, we will see you guys next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.